Hey everyone, it's Weed. This is my career research project presentation on the sociology of sport. This is an example for you. You can see that I've used the slides and how I've created this, and ultimately will be under 10 minutes for you to get this information. So sports sociologists study the relationship between sports and society. If you notice also, there is a picture of me here in the video, not because I want to, but as the example of how you should have yours as well. So the educational requirements for the undergrad level, there are not specific sports sociology majors that I could find in the United States of America. So at the undergrad level, you probably want to study kinesiology with a minor in sociology, or a major in sociology with a minor in kinesiology. And some of the topics for sociology of sport would be sport and gender, sport and violence, sport and religion, sport and race, sport and youth participation, sport and aging, sport and participation, sport and sexuality, sport amateur versus professional, and many, many other ones as well. So no requirements at the undergrad level. Now, if you stay in the kinesiology major, most of you will probably have a sociology of sport specific class somewhere along your educational journey. So there is no certification or license required to become a sports sociologist. So to do research, you don't necessarily have to have any type of certificate or license. You need to be inquisitive. You need to have the powers of observation, since you're going to be doing a lot of observing, a lot of field note, a lot of interviewing, a lot of data collection, a lot of listening, and a lot of writing when you are involved with that. For graduate school, so if you want to be a sports sociologist and study sociology of sport, then you have to go for a master's or doctoral level type of degree. So at the University of Texas, they have a master's degree, and what that requires is a bachelor's degree, a GPA of 3.0 for the last 2 years of college, or your graduate studies. If you've done that, you need to take the GRE, which I have taken, a score of 150 or higher, and for the verbal and quantitative section, or a combined score above 300. So if you get 140 and 161, that's the real one. You make that. You need 2 letters of application, and if you want to, you can try to apply right here at the UT Stark Center. So again, if you want to become a sports sociologist, you have to have a master's degree or higher. So for a sports sociologist, the daily work day, there is no typical day, and you're going to find that for a lot of positions. So if you're in education, which a lot of times sports sociologists are researchers, they're educators, they're writers, they publish. So you would want to develop some sort of research topic that you have an interest in, and then you have to go out and find the population to study, get permission to study that, do the research. Then you're going to evaluate all of the research that you find. You're going to publish it. And then eventually you're going to want to publish that into peer-reviewed journals. And then if you're in education, you're also going to teach classes. So here are some images of violence in sports that you could talk about. So this is some sort of MMA. So if 2 people on the street do this, that would be illegal, correct? But if you're within the bounds of the octagon, somehow that becomes okay. Just like in ice hockey. If 2 people were to get upset and start fighting each other out in the street, they would be arrested. But again, in hockey, sometimes I believe that's encouraged and people get excited about that. Here's an example from the 1968 Olympics. Again, if you take a sociology of sport, you might talk about that. So there are some professional organizations that I could find. One of them was the North American Society for the Sociology of Sport, which was founded in 1978. The other one is the International Sociology of Sport Association, which was apparently founded in 1965 or somewhere around there. Unfortunately, kids, The ISSA 2020 is postponed from October 14th to the 17th because of the COVID. Here is the journal that is produced by one of these professional organizations. There's also the North American Society for the Sociology of Sport. Now, on your directions, you're supposed to find an Indeed.com job sample. I wasn't able to find it on Indeed, so I went to Higher Ed Jobs, and this is from 2018, where I was able to find a job for an assistant professor of kinesiology, and you can see right here, they need to have a background in sociology, so you can look at what the details are. This individual needs to have, let's see here, a PhD, which is a doctorate of philosophy in kinesiology related to these topics. And this is at Penn State Harrisburg in Middletown, Pennsylvania. It is only part-time, so it's not a full-time position. And there are some different requirements as well for the position. And then the last slide here are my references, which are found in APA. Now, it's not double spaced because that would take up a lot of room and the reformatting would be changed. And also you want to tab this in, but a lot of times you lose the formatting for this. So I don't have the link here to the media coverage in sport, but that is the presentation, and we're at 6 minutes and 44 seconds right now. So you can see you can get this done. Normally I would stop, but I'm going to give you some bonus points and listen to this gentleman, Dr. Harry Edwards, on the sociology of sports origins. So you can watch him. I'm going to get off of the screen while this plays. So the presentation is over. This is extra credit.
We have come a very, very long way since 1967. But the reality is that most of it has been compelled by developments at that time. My dissertation that I finally ended up writing coming out of 1968, Cornell University, was titled Sociology of Sport. And it became the first integrated textbook focusing on a sociological analysis of sport as a social institution. Up until that time, sport had been relegated to physical education. Sociologists didn't feel that it was up to their standard as an area of career focus or analysis. And one of the big challenges that I had was convincing even the people at Cornell that sport was worth looking at, that despite 105 years of sociology, a major institution, an increasingly important institution, had been overlooked and bypassed, mostly out of academic arrogance, that this was beneath us to deal with these physical activities. And the thing that finally convinced them that, hey, yeah, you can go ahead and write your dissertation in this area, was when I asked the question during a committee meeting, committee conference, my committee that was overseeing my dissertation, how can we believe as sociologists that a dyad, a two-person relationship, or a triad, a three-person relationship, is worthy of analysis that includes volumes and hundreds of dissertations, but 100 million people watching the Super Bowl is not worthy of investigation from a sociological perspective. It seems to me that that's a bit upside down. They had no response to that other than, okay, go ahead and do it. And at the end of it, it became, my dissertation was published as the first integrated textbook in the sociology of sport. Now, that is was driven by the events of 1967-68. My work as a consultant was driven by the events of 1967 and 68. Even at Berkeley, the faculty for 31 years. The sociology of sport was seen as less of an academic research area of career interest than a fascinating teaching interest that class in and class out logged 600, 700, 800. I had one class up there that had 1,100 students in it because everybody is interested in sports. But in terms of my actual standing in the department as a research PhD and so forth, they said, oh, come on, this is sport. They felt pretty much the way my committee did initially at Cornell. This is sport. This is not sociology. This is not serious sociology. I mean, that guy that's sitting in a class with 5 graduate students, only 2 of whom even understand what he's talking about, that's a serious sociologist, you know. And so at the end of the day, I said, okay, fine, no problem. So I began to move out into the field as a scholar activist and to interface with the action down on the ground, with the sports teams. And so at the end of it all, I ended up 5 years in the Commissioner of Major League Baseball's office. I ended up 10 years with the Golden State Warriors and the NBA, and this is my 21st year here, not to speak of having lectured at every major institution in this country with a sports team, and having written extensively in every form of publication about sport and society. All of that was driven by events in 1967 and 68. Erase that period from my resume, and I'm sitting up in some university, probably having moved on from teaching and research to administration and maybe doing something else where, a 6'8" Ivy League educated, articulate former faculty member at the University of California at Berkeley would prove useful, if only as a front. So I've all of this was driven by that 18-month period.
So very interesting. He has a number of other presentations as well that you could watch if you want to. So we're at 12 minutes, almost 13, and 6 minutes of bonus. So that's what you need to do. See it.